My name is Gabriela Marmolejo, and today I will be discussing why America needs to adapt stricter gun control laws and regulations in order to combat the growing epidemic of gun violence in our country. When conversing on these topics of gun control and gun violence, it is important to address the root cause of this gun violence epidemic that we are currently living. And after extensive research, I found a direct link between the high number of firearms in America and gun violence. So this high number essentially makes these firearms easily accessible, which in turn adds to the gun violence epidemic. However, there are many opponents to this argument who claim that guns don't kill people, people kill people. We've all heard of that one. However, like I said, I did extensive research, and in a quote by Max Fisher for the New York Times in an article titled "Gun Control Explained," he states, "There are several theories to explain the number of shootings in the United States. Like, it's usually violent societal, class, and racial divides, or its shortcomings in providing mental health care. However, these have been debunked by research. One variable remains, though: the astronomical number of guns in the country." This quote highlights that research has invalidated several theories, like the ones previously stated, attempting to explain the high incidence of shootings in the United States, with the prevalence of firearms emerging as a significant factor that we can't deny, we can't ignore it. Another piece of evidence to support this claim is by Max Fisher again. So he cites experts in the field, John Lott, to explain how the data clearly shows a link between the number of guns and the number of gun deaths. So, like I said, data from experts in the field, including criminologist and public health official Dr. John Lott, he emphasizes the connection between firearms and death. He has studied and asserts that there is in fact a correlation between the number of guns and the rate of gun violence, bringing awareness to the importance of addressing the primary cause of our ongoing gun violence crisis, because understanding and mitigating the root causes can lead to more effective and lasting solutions. As for the origins of the current gun violence epidemic, it can be traced back to three main points. The first being the mass production of guns in America. As I previously stated, if there's too much of something, it will consequently be easily accessible for civilians. So there's an easy accessibility of firearms, and it becomes even easier to obtain one when our country has very weak gun laws. So those are the three main points, but there's subgenres in these points. For instance, in the easy accessibility of firearms, there are the lack of background checks, gun show loopholes, our current gun laws and regulations. You know how there's variability in state laws, so some states have weaker laws, some have stronger, but for the majority senses, the gun laws tend to be very weak. There's also the NRA and other guns rights organizations that, promote that, the right to bear arms. It is also important to talk about the cultural attitude towards guns. There definitely is, the gun culture that we see, especially amongst younger people. So there's that glorification of gun use. There's also, in the cultural attitude portion of it, the belief in guns for self-defense, how it's, some Americans claim it their God-given right. A lot of them cite the Second Amendment right, the right to bear arms. So all of this creates easy access to firearms, high number of guns in America. Those are the origins. The most important historical fact concerning guns in America is most definitely the Second Amendment, the how it came to be, the why we even have this right. So, as we all know, the Second Amendment was ratified in 1791 as part of the Bill of Rights. And we've all heard the quote, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." And because of this right, it is always brought up in gun control conversations as a justification not to have stricter gun control. However, I do think this quote is taken a bit out of context, and the article from the Science Survey titled "Dear America, Your Second Amendment Right Doesn't Actually Exist" explains this really well. So the text says, "And while the Second Amendment was important to our founding fathers, it has not preserved the individual right to bear arms or even the right to self-defense that many consider crucial to American democracy. Instead, it applies in the context of a militia, where citizens have the right to protect themselves against a tyrannical government." This quote highlights the original intent behind the Second Amendment, which was to ensure that citizens could form militias to protect themselves from oppressive governments, the British, at the time. So, as we all know it, after declaring independence from Britain, the colonists wanted to ensure that they would never be subject to an oppressive government again. So they created the Bill of Rights to protect themselves, to protect certain inalienable rights, which included the Second Amendment, stating that a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It is important to understand the historical perspective of the time and the original intent behind the Second Amendment in order to contribute to contemporary debates about gun control and individual rights. By recognizing that the amendment was initially about collective security and protection against tyranny, we can better assess current legal interpretations and policy decisions related to gun ownership. The events of April 4th, 1968, with the tragic assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis, and then 9 weeks later, the fatal shooting of President Robert F. Kennedy in Los Angeles, marked a significant shift in the political landscape of that time. The assassinations led to a significant change in gun laws. In response to these tragedies, the United States Congress passed the Gun Control Act of 1968. This law established stricter regulations on the scale and possession of firearms, including prohibiting the sale of guns to individuals with criminal records and those deemed mentally incompetent. Additionally, the law imposed licensing requirements for firearm manufacturers, importers, and dealers. Popular arguments made in support of guns is that they promote personal safety. The pro-gun people argue that if you're in a situation of danger, if you have a firearm on you, your rate of survival increases than if you did not. They also argue that the presence of a gun can act as a deterrent to crime. Knowing that potential victims might be armed can discourage criminals from attempting violent acts. And another popular argument is that people kill people, not guns. So this often ties into mental health, and it's an argument that comes up from the pro-gun people as, a better alternative to gun regulations and gun laws. So they think, in order to combat gun violence, the focal point should be mental health and not implementing better regulations and laws. My personal stance on this issue pertaining to gun control is that implementing stricter gun control measures is crucial to reducing gun violence and ensuring public safety, as the current lenient regulations allow for easy access to firearms, contributing to the high rates of shootings and endangering the well-being of communities. I also believe that by supporting the implementation of stricter gun control measures, individuals have the opportunity to play a crucial role in fostering a safer society characterized by fewer occurrences of gun violence. To effect meaningful change, I believe that it is imperative for individuals to partake in well-informed dialogues, endorse policies grounded in evidence, and take proactive steps to confront the multifaceted challenge of gun violence within the United States. I provided two pieces of evidence to support my stance. The first that I would like to discuss is the one in the article titled U.S. Gun Policy, Global Comparisons by Jonathan Masters. It states, the United States, with less than 5% of the world's population, has 46% of the world's civilian-owned guns, according to the most recent report by the Switzerland-based Small Arms Survey in 2018. It ranks number one in firearms per capita. The United States also has the highest homicide by firearm rate of the world's most developed nations. So these statistics are relevant because they underscore the sheer volume of firearms in civilian hands in the U.S. compared to the rest of the world. They also highlight a crucial point about the relationship between gun laws and gun-related violence. It states that countries with stricter gun laws tend to have lower rates of gun-related deaths and crimes. This is an important observation that supports the argument for implementing more stringent gun control measures. Now, the second piece of evidence that I want to discuss goes as follows. So it says, every year the gun industry rakes in approximately $9 billion, while gun violence kills more than 40,000 people in America and wounds twice as many, at a moment when gun violence has become the leading cause of death for teens in America. So that quote is from the article, The Gun Industry Rakes in Billions While Our Communities Pay the Price. So what this quote means, or its impact, is that the data in that quote underscores the profound financial ramifications of gun violence, encompassing significant costs such as medical expenses, law enforcement resources, and the societal impact of lost productivity. It really lets you understand the impact that the gun violence is having on our economy and the amount of lives that are being lost. The fact that gun violence kills more than 40,000 people in America, I think that should be enough to call for action. All right, so let's get into the environmental scan. So for the industry market, I stated, by addressing the economic costs and unethical marketing practices through stricter regulations, society can reduce the financial strain of gun violence and protect vulnerable populations. Moving forward to the economics portion, I put the healthcare and law enforcement sectors bear the financial burden of gun related injuries and violence, which has broader economic implications. For the politics section, I put politically, gun control is a contentious issue with strong lobbying from both pro gun and gun control advocates. Legislation varies widely, reflecting the divided public opinion and political landscape. So I split these into two to make the text fit. So I will see you in part 2. Okay, so now we're getting into the part 2 portion of our environmental scan. So for my part 2, we have technology first and foremost. So technological advancements play a dual role. On one hand, innovations like smart gun technology aim to prevent unauthorized use. On the other hand, illegal modifications increase the lethality of firearms, posing significant challenges for public safety. Now we have the social aspect. So socially, the debate around gun control is polarized. While some advocate for stricter regulations to enhance public safety, others view it as an infringement on their rights. The social impact includes the psychological and physical toll on communities affected by gun violence. So now for the regulations. Regulatory measures are crucial in controlling the distribution and modification of firearms. However, enforcement can be challenging, and regulations often face pushback from various interest groups, affecting their effectiveness. So that is it for my environmental scans. Thank you.